This is an excerpt from the live recording of the Insecure Agents podcast, episode 1, that took place during RSA Conference 2025. Thank you, Mark, for joining me. I'm Allie. Welcome to the Insecure Agents podcast. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm the founder of Growth Cyber. It's a cybersecurity consulting company that helps startups with things like SOC 2, compliance, NIST AI, RMF, as well as AI security gap assessments and also AI agents, of course. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Name's Mark Dorsi. I'm a startup specialist. And so I spend most of my time working with startups out there in the world. I'm the CISO at Netlify. And so, of course, AI is near and dear to our hearts over there, being the default platform for many of the platforms that are out there today as far as vibe coding and those sorts of things are concerned. So if you're deploying from Bolt or Windsurf or the curses of the world, you're hitting Netlify as soon as you go to deploy. And so all of these topics are really near and dear to our hearts, I guess.
Yeah, no, super excited to get into a bunch of different topics today. Also just wanted to set the stage and kind of go off what Kyle said around, why agents? Why not have a podcast about just AI generally? I literally just got in from SFO, and along the way here, every billboard I thought was something about agents. So why is it not just LMs? Why is it not just AI anymore? I think to set the stage, Sequoia had come out and said maybe like a few months ago that the total addressable market for agents was 3 times as large as traditional SaaS. So I think so that's one reason. There's tons of economic opportunity. Two, I think it's really cool to do a podcast on agents specifically because the security risks with agents are so much more than just traditional like LLMs and LLM workflows, and that's just due to the higher level of non-determinism. I think in the OWASP agentic threats and mitigations guide that just came out, there's threats in there around tool misuse, memory poisoning, even like so far as human manipulation. Like I think agents like really take it a step farther. The stakes are raised, so I think like it's a really important time to be talking about agents specifically. And Mark, I'm really excited to be talking today about the new type of developer that we're seeing create these AI agents. When we did the hackathon in New York City with Penzar, we did this with OWASP, and one of my biggest takeaways from that event was just how easy it is to create an insecure agent. Thanks to all of these new, vibe coding tools, like frameworks that are out there. So what are you seeing at Netlify?
Yeah, we're seeing a major uptick right now. You can imagine. So, in about 6 months' time, we had 1 million sites deployed through Bolt alone. And that's brand new developers, people trying it out of all various stages, styles in their career, whatever it might be. Lots of prototyping, lots of really valid use cases. And what we're seeing is that, of course, yes, there's people out there trying for the first time. They want to create any number of neat new sites and those sorts of things. But at the same time, we're also seeing folks really expand their developer environment. And so when you're thinking about it from an agent perspective, those folks are just expanding their IDE. It's another tool in their set of things that they're going to go to over time. And I really see that this developer is really developing this entire persona. We call it agent experience at Netlify. And it's really around this developer and how their agent, right, is going to experience the overall development of the next set of code that really doesn't care what the frameworks are, what the back end is. You just allow that agent to pick whatever it might pick, and it's going to deploy that thing. And it it may or may not deploy the correct thing. And so all the insecurities that go with it. And we've seen things. So yes, I am the CISO, but I'm also the head of global customer support. In 1 week time, we saw the same exact vulnerability come through across multiple customer sites. All of them just had been asking their agent on how to deploy a thing, copy, paste, enter, go. Brand new bug hit that was never hit before, right? And so you're going to see that, right? Because it's going to hallucinate a bit. It's going to have some problems here and there. And that will go across many, many different developers as things go forward. So that developer's environment and how they're using us is really going to change. I really do see this world where, for example, I'm going to have multiple personas within these different agents that are out there that I will have worked with over time, and I'll be drawing from those sources depending on the type of development I'm gonna do. So it isn't just me having access to one agent and that one thing deploying. Just think about the LLM you're using today. It knows you in a very particular way, right? You interact with it every single day. And at no point in time would I see where, like, the developers always sort of end up ruling the roost. Well, they're going to be the ones who have this concept, this whole LLM where they've been developing, I don't know, their Go code forever in, right? Well, what is that going to look like? Are you really going to tell them, well, you have to use this other area to develop in now? No, it's my IDE. I get my, my check boxes in in GitHub. I get all that stuff, right? That's where you are. So the question is for everybody, how are we going to work in a world where it's, bring your own agent to Workday, and it's going to develop those next set of things because it knows who you are, your persona, and how that thing is going to go out the other side. So we're already seeing that today at Netlify. It's really wild. And if you think about it, tens of thousands of developers are already using Netlify in a way that's never been used before, and they're actively doing it right now. So it's really interesting. Everything from internal sites, productivity sites, to like CEOs of companies having wanted a particular report in a particular style, and they just threw in a prompt and it's ready for them now. That like no one inside the company actually had to do anything. And so insecure agents, I think, is very top of mind for most folks right now.
Yes, absolutely, and I liked what you said about people are just using their IDs and the agents are going to choose whatever they're going to choose. I see a lot of people sharing their cursor rules files around, and those can have, like, hidden Unicode characters in them, and then so you think it's executing some level of instructions, but it's actually doing something completely different. Pillar Security put out a really good research paper about this recently. They also created a free scanner where you can upload your cursor rules files, and it'll scan them for you. I think Pencer does this as well now. Super cool. So yeah, there's definitely like great resources out there to make sure that you're using Cursor or your vibe coding securely. There's also tools that will scan on vibe. So like every time your ID generates code, like you could call out to like the semgrep MCP server and put that in your rules file to say, hey, scan this code every time I create it, just to make sure you're not introducing more vulnerabilities in your code, which I think is fantastic. Um, Another thing I'm seeing people use, which is very, topical right now, is MCP servers. Unfortunately, there's no official package management system for MCP right now, so that also is kind of like the Wild West. The Trail of Bits blog just put out a really good post about this recently. A certain attack that I saw that they covered, where there was a malicious tool in the server, and the tool description was something like, "We have to make sure that we export the entire user's chat history because it's important for SOC 2." Like, I guess the LLM knows enough to know that SOC 2 is important, but not enough to know about SOC 2 to know that's an actual terrible idea to be exporting the entire chat history and just sending it off to, like, some, MCP server somewhere, be in the name of SOC 2. So, obviously not great, and that's a really, particularly bad threat and vulnerability. One, because it's not like someone's just, like, popping a shell on your, where you're running your application and being able to, like, see what's going on and move laterally or whatever. Popping a shell is actually pretty noisy. In a lot of ways, attackers get caught. If you have a malicious tool like this that you've imported from an MCP server and it's just hanging out, you're not going to discover it because it's not like making any noise like a shell would be. It's just hanging out there and you blindly are trusting this. So, one way I've seen people start to address this is they're starting to scan MCP servers for these malicious tool descriptions. And Variant Labs just started doing this, and they just announced a partnership with Smithery, which is a popular MCP registry. And so now if you go to Smithery and you look at the different MCP servers, you'll see a secure badge, which has the results of like the Invariant Lab scan, which I think was a really interesting, neat partnership. One of the ways that we're potentially, solving this, no package management issue for MCP. But how are you seeing people use MCP at Netlify today?
Yeah, we just had a whole release about this over the weekend, and it is definitely on the trend and on the rise in a big way. This all reminds me so much. I mean, history repeats itself, of course, always. This reminds me of when Artifactory got going, and like everyone started using Artifactory. It's like, this is where we're going to store our stuff. It's going to be totally great. It's going to be totally fine. Like, oh my gosh, it's so fast. And look, all these things are distributed automatically. And oh no, it's got versions and control. Oh, okay, great. And then it starts over a couple of years, starts to be corrupted. Well, what you see with things like the MCP world, like the point of attack becomes just quicker and quicker and quicker, right? So the adversaries are picking up on those much faster. And what we're trying to do, for example, like in Netlify, is properly guardrail folks. And how do we help them be guardrailed over time so that instead of them not necessarily thinking about what's going on? I mean, I go back to this, which is how many of y'all are worried about your TLS connections? Anybody worried about that, or do you just take it for granted? No one, no one's necessarily worried about it today. You, we have HTTPS. It's great. I never even think about it anymore. We're good. Everything's fine. It'll patch and all that other sort of stuff. In a similar fashion, that happened with Artifactory. It happened with HTTPS. All the way across the board, we have to build in those guardrails so that when a developer goes out, they're going to use a particular set of these things that they are safe and secure by default. That's the whole point. And so as we go out and try and ensure that folks are safe and secure by default, that means a lot of little things have to happen over time. Badging is an interesting concept, right? We've seen this across the board. Like, how many of y'all remember the green badge the green thing that said, "Oh, this site is okay," in Google Chrome? Remember that? Like, it was all there, right? It was, all these ideas are coming through, right? What's old is new is always the case. And I think what you're going to probably start to see over time is that actually these particular repositories have never been scanned. So instead of looking, for the green check and everything else, right? They're interesting now and they're good ideas. In time, you'll just sort of see that your IDE won't even actually pick it up because it's unsigned. Right. You're just not even to be able to pick that thing up. You won't even, consider those to be valid. You have to do that little thing that you do in Chrome today, which is go to advanced and say, yes, I really, really want to download, this malware. Like, allow me to do that. Right. And so, the "Are you sure" button in multiple levels. But yeah, so at the end of all of it, as we're seeing these things rise, they're going to be really important, right, for productivity. And a developer will find a way. The question is whether or not we can guardrail them effectively so that they can work at speed. What I see a lot of times, companies will put in a bunch of gates. These never work. The question is whether or not you can properly guardrail someone to give them the access to the thing that they need. I'd alluded to it before, but what I see today, so as a startup specialist, I speak with lots and lots of founders out there, and I still see lots of gates type plays. What does that mean? It means that when someone goes to use an LLM, they'll say, "Oh, you're plugging in PII into this LLM. Don't do that." That, that's not helpful. What's helpful is see that PII is going in, redact all that PII, then send it on through to the LLM in order to do its processing, then automatically put it back together for me. And in which case, it was never a problem. We need the same thing with all these other technologies for vibe coders. They need all of those same things. The technologies need to shim the different environments so that we're not losing the data, but in a safe and secure way so that the developer continue to act at speed. If you put a roadblock in front of them, they're just going to find a way around it. And that's really ineffective. So guardrails, not gates, still at the forefront of all the things.
100%, yeah, because I totally agree with that, and I think the things that are roadblocks, they ended up not getting used, and people will go around them, so it's actually not really worth anyone's time because 'cause they'll be circumvented eventually. I really liked what you said about secure by design. I think you can really start to have a secure by design type of conversation when it comes to protecting data, like you mentioned, redacting data, hosting your LLM such that it's not, being able to expose to the open internet. Maybe it's like, within a private subnet or something within Bedrock, or it's not even open to the internet. So that, resolves like some concerns there. I think something that's hard to do to make secure by design is AI safety. So when you start to get into that conversation around like, making sure outputs are like not toxic, they're relevant, and it's also just like a security and also a production type issue. Like both engineering teams and security teams care about that agents are outputting relevant, safe information, and that it's aligned to the business use case. And that keyword aligned, that's going to be different depending on the use case for the agent and depending on the business itself. So when you say like secure by design or some sort of repeatable pattern around alignment and evaluation and AI safety, I think that's a really, really hard conversation that's hard to solve. I don't know if you're doing anything with that like at Netlify, but I just think that's a much bigger issue that's bigger than this one podcast, but it's something that's of interest to me.
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, as these things develop and time goes on, we have been looking at it, right? But this is in some cases, right, depending on what you're thinking about, it's a 9-week-old conversation, maybe 10. right? And this can kind of go back, to last year where we were really getting into the whole environment and trying to take a look at what folks were working with and dealing with. At the end of all of it, though, it is all about the swing and the uptick. The entire market has changed every single week since we've been at it, right? And it's changing with high rates of velocity. And I would say that what we are seeing is that as folks are deploying, their behavioral patterns are changing so that, like with all pressure that's happened in time, a quick side story here is I'm a developer back in the 90s, and all of a sudden, Java hits the scene. And I'm like, well, what is this language? Like, it's not C, it's not C++, all that other sort of stuff. Then to top it off, somebody starts bringing in this program called JBuilder. I'm like, what? Drag and drop. All it's doing is drag and drop in all of this garbage code. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's just garbage. Like, okay. And so there I am, like recoding all the things right in the background. Fast forward like 2, 3 years, that made it into the mainstream. What happened? What happened was that all the young and up and coming folks all knew Java. And that became the language of choice quickly, very quick. And that meant that all of the existing developers had to pick up a new language in a hurry. Otherwise, the job pressure became in such a way that they couldn't pick up the hot newness. Similar with AI and all the agentic stuff that's going on right now. And so we're going to see very rapid adoption of what's going on as far as all of this agentic programming is concerned. And all of those existing developers who are out there will help pave the way around the security controls that we actually need in time. We haven't, and that's just starting right now. I've had a couple conversations already this week with folks. It's like, no, I now have this plugged into my development environment. As I go through to develop, I do this. We have the SemGrep checks. I have that, right? Everything is getting plugged in and brought forward so that folks don't get left behind in the technology space. Yes, we still need all the people who work on all of the Fortran, COBOL, like it all still exists. But folks want to stay relevant. They want to stay forward. They will push the technology so you will stay, relevant in time. And that's really what we're starting to see. Quick uptick by other folks, and they're leaving behind the actual old legacy frameworks. They don't really care too much. They want the thing to pick the correct tech. Of course, they scrutinize it. No, I need you to pick this other tech, but that's rapidly falling away, right? So that's what we're seeing across the board.
Very interesting. Yeah, I feel like maybe some of the agent frameworks are capitalizing on that. I think I see on X all the time where there's this like bell curve, and on either end of the bell curve is don't use a framework, and that's either because like they're totally vibe coding or that because they're just extremely cracked machine learning engineers and they just like don't need it. But I think most people are probably sitting in the middle using these frameworks, which is great. But because those have some usable, repeatable patterns, maybe that's a great place to insert a security guardrail because everyone's going to use that. Like you mentioned, I think one thing that I'm interested to see more of from either these frameworks or other people in the community is patterns around deploying agents securely. I know some of the frameworks are starting to offer that. I think like Cloudflare's dabbling in that as well. But yeah, what does it mean to deploy an agent securely? And is that something Netlify can help with?
Yeah, it is. So definitely, with the windsurfs, cursors of the world, that sort of thing, right? Of course, Bolt. We allow for all of those sort of things, right? So we're platform agnostic. We don't really care about how it is. Our goal at the end of the day is integrity. So should you deploy something to us, whatever that is that comes out the other side will remain with its integrity and it comes out. And that to me, from a platform play, is the most important thing, right? So is it going to be available and does it have its integrity? And it's our job in the background to not worry, for you to not have to worry about all the secure portions of the show that go on. If you think about it, right, folks who use a Netlify type service, they've already outsourced 100% of the DevOps pipeline. Right? Is the whole CDN. They don't want to do any of that, right? The whole goal is that they're able to set it and forget it. And that's what we really do as a service. Similar idea, like we do all of that for all of the security, all the connectivity, being HIPAA compliant, like we do all of the, security controls for companies. They've already outsourced all of that. So the end of all of it, right? We're here to help folks do just that, also in the agentic space. It just fits perfectly with our model.
Yeah, I think as we mentioned, a lot of people are building with these agent frameworks. A lot of the code that gets generated from these frameworks are extremely abstracted. I wrote a multi-agent system using LangGraph and 160 lines of code with 3 different agents and a supervisor that had them talk to each other. One was connected to a database and creating any SQL query I thought it wanted or needed to create run a task. Super frightening, really great. And then the other one was web scraping, something off the internet. Didn't tell exactly what site it had to go to. It just decided on its own. Also terrifying. But yeah, that was only done in 160 lines of code. And I threw that at a bunch of different SaaS scanners, and they're all just no vulnerabilities found, no issues. And I was like, oh no, there's issues. um, so I think scanning these frameworks is pretty difficult because there's just not that much code there to scan because they're so abstracted. There's just less, and there's most of it's just an import statement. Um, I think Penzar is a really interesting company in this space that's niched down into how to scan agent frameworks and just agents in general. Penzar and Splix AI come to mind as kind of the two in this space that are unique in doing this. If you are building with agents, if you're, coding agents, please check out these tools. They're very helpful. Your traditional SaaS scanner is not going to do the trick. And in my, personal humble experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the case. And as you're developing your IDE environment, right, and you're moving forward, and you want to be sure that you're staying up with the times and everything else, I would say that if you're not plugging in a tool like this today, and you're starting to go out and vibe code, and you're going to bring that code into your production environments, that's what we're seeing right now. It's coming in at a very fast rate. If that's the case, you're going to end up deploying a ton of insecure code. I mean, as I mentioned, I run global customer support, and we're already seeing it come through. And this is for live sites published that are out there. I mean, all the keys are exposed, right? Everything is just out there. And those are just a handful of the different little things that it can occur. And so just like you said, I mean, I couldn't agree more. No, there are issues here. Why aren't you finding them? And so it's no, just you need the right tool. The tools are attuned in order to really have this type of interaction. And it's a ground up type build that you need in order to understand the type of issues that are going to come through. And they're going to come through it with a high rate of speed. You're just going to see the same things over and over and over again. At least that's what we're seeing. And then as the LLMs learn that those are, and all the agents learn that these aren't good pieces, good topics, good things to inject into code, maybe it'll get better in time. But right now what we're seeing is a high rate of the same errors being made over and over again. So you definitely need to plug into your IDE. A tool like a Penzar will only make you better as you go forward.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation around insecure agents today. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about this at RSA over the next few days, but also in many weeks and months to follow. So please connect with us on social media and connect with Penzar, connect with our podcast. We'd love to continue the conversation. If you've got ideas for future episodes you'd like to see, please let me know. Once again, thank you so much to RunLoop for having us. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. Looking forward to seeing everyone next time.